one of the most charismatic men I've ever met, and he's definitely a ladies' man. I was just calling him Professor Hawking this, trying to be... And then the first thing he said was, in his iconic voice, he said, "Please call me Stephen."
Stephen, as in Hawking. Actor Eddie Redmayne, as he talked about the man whom he portrayed in the film called The Theory of Everything. He won an Oscar for that. Stephen Hawking, of course, became a figure in pop culture, but first and foremost, he was a towering figure in science, and his influence spreading far and wide and touching our own CBC family. Bob McDonald is with me now, the host of Quirks and Quarks, our science commentator, our pal in Victoria. Great to see you on this, Bob. And it's such important to spend some time with you, because here is a man who spent his life seeking answers to the biggest questions in the universe. What did Stephen Hawking's discoveries teach us?
Well, Stephen Hawking taught us about the bizarre world of quantum physics, extreme gravity, and black holes, and even the beginning of the universe. And those, you can't get any bigger than that. He's most famous for discovering that black holes are not entirely black. He didn't come up with the idea of black holes, but before him, the idea was that if you fell into a black hole, you don't come out. Nothing comes out of a black hole. But because he was studying quantum physics, which is the very, very tiny world within the atom where bizarre things can happen, where particles can pop in and out of existence, he said that, you know, if you had two particles that popped into existence right at the edge of a black hole, right at the point where you're going to fall in and not come back, one of them will go in, the other one will go out. And the one that goes out will take energy away from that black hole, so over very long periods of time, the black hole could evaporate. This was crazy. It's now called Hawking radiation. So that was his first. And his second one is that he tried to bring together the two forces that have yet been married. One is in quantum, very, very tiny, quantum physics, and gravitation, which is the biggest. It goes out to the entire universe. There's no theory to bring the two of them together called the theory of everything. And the reason he wanted to do that, and everybody does, is because at the very beginning of time, the Big Bang, everything big was crunched into something very small. So they were together at the beginning. So our very existence came from this whole theory of everything, which nobody knows yet. So that's where he was. That's where his brain was all the time.
That's where that incredible brain was working. For all of that, for all of his contributions, he never won the Nobel Prize, though.
No, because everything that he did is theoretical. And to win the Nobel Prize, it has to be proven observationally, and nobody's seen Hawking radiation yet because it's very difficult to measure, and we can't go back to the beginning of time to see what the universe really did look like then. So there's no, it's all theoretical physics at this point, and unfortunately he didn't get the Nobel Prize, but his fame outweighed that. I mean, he became such a good popularizer of science. Everybody in the world knows who he is, even just by looking at him.
And so, he drew through the fact that he popularized science, as you said, pop culture figure. The Simpsons, movies about him, Big Bang Theory, the show. I mean, what do you think his impact was on non-scientists like myself?
They say his book, The Brief History of Time, was the most popular book that was never read. But he did bring it out there. You know, he had the nerve to take very esoteric science, which is totally beyond our everyday world. It's completely alien to us, but he did bring it out into the popular mind and at least make it known that this is important stuff. Even though it might not solve your income tax this year, it is important stuff, because out of fundamental science come the biggest break that we've had in history. So that's why fundamental science is really important, and he kept that alive.
You met him. Tell me that story and the impression he created in you.
Well, he came to Canada. In fact, now there's a Hawking Institute at the Perimeter Institute in Ontario. In 2010, I had a brief chance. I saw his lecture, and then there was a dinner afterwards, and he was at my table. And I went up to him after all the hubbub had died down, and I looked him in the eye and I said, "Professor Hawking, I'm a science journalist, and that zero-G flight that you went on where he's floating weightless, I actually went on that same flight. Not when he did, but I went out another time." And I told him about how remarkable that was and how he must have had a good time, and I understood. And then I looked at him and I said, "I never thought I would have anything in common with Stephen Hawking. Maybe I'll see you in space." And he looked right at me. He always had a twinkle in his eye, and he gave me a wink, because at that point, that's all he could do. And I felt for a brief time a connection to Stephen Hawking. So that was my little encounter with him, and I feel really proud that I was able to do that.
Wow. That's my little intake of air at that beautiful story. Richard Branson, of course, had promised him a flight in space, which he never was able to take, but he did experience. We were looking at the photo there, and the moment of euphoria as he experienced weightlessness. Stephen Hawking. Bob, thank you so much. Great to see you as always. Bob McDonald from Victoria this morning. Meanwhile, the tributes to Stephen Hawking, they are flooding in from far and wide around the world, from a TV space explorer, George Takei, who treated one of the greatest minds in our species has ever produced, has returned to the stars, and he called for the continued pursuit of scientific inquiry in his honor. Journalist Dan Rather called Hawking a shining light that defied expectation, blessed with a brilliant mind and uncommon grace. And of course, NASA taking time to remember an ambassador of science who unlocked a universe of possibilities. Stephen Hawking. You're watching CBC News Network.